On my last cruise, something that I always bring on board suddenly got confiscated. And this could happen to you too, because cruise lines are banning more items than ever. Here are 10 banned items you need to know about or risk getting kicked off the ship. I'm Gary with Optimal Cruising, bringing you fresh cruise advice, money-saving hacks, and secret strategies the cruise lines don't advertise. Let's get started. I used to bring a little Bluetooth speaker like this guy on every cruise because I'd like to set it up in the cabin and listen to music sometimes at night, or maybe if I'm watching a show on my iPad, I like to have a decent speaker for some better sound. But more and more these are getting banned. In fact, Carnival Cruise Line has banned them completely. Other cruise lines are still allowing them, but they have a lot of restrictions. So Royal Caribbean and MSC will allow you to bring it on board for use in your room, but they do not allow it in public areas. And if you violate that, they may confiscate it for the rest of your cruise. Unfortunately, it's inconsiderate actions like that that cause these bans, which impact everybody. But the next item on this list has more to do with protecting cruise line profits. It wasn't too long ago, I would go on a cruise and inevitably see somebody setting up some equipment out on their balcony to get free internet with Starlink and a router, and they could surf the web the entire cruise and not have to pay a dime to the cruise line Wi-Fi program. Well, cruise lines have wised up to this, and they are protecting their profit center. And cruise lines are taking this ban seriously. I am aware of at least one passenger who recently got a Starlink device on board through security. They didn't pick it up, but it was noticed later on, and it was confiscated, and the passenger was fined $500 for bringing that banned item on board. It's quite obvious why cruise lines want to ban satellite internet devices, but this next item has even me confused. It's always been interesting to me to walk down the corridor of the staterooms on a cruise ship and see some of the decorations that people put up on their doors. But one particular item has now been banned from Carnival Cruise Lines, and it's likely that other major cruise lines will follow, and that is the pineapple. Most veteran cruisers are aware that a pineapple, especially an upside-down pineapple on a cruise door, is a symbol to other adult cruisers in a certain swinging lifestyle that you are of that lifestyle as well. And for some reason, the cruise ships don't want that being advertised, and it's starting to be banned. Yeah, most of us won't be too bothered by that one, but if you don't know about this next banned item, it could leave you without enough power. Every time I go on a cruise, I struggle with the fact that the cruise cabins have a limited number of outlets. In fact, in some cases, you can really only find one or two available to use. And I used to bring a cube that turned one of those outlets into 3 different outlets. It wasn't a power strip. Power strips have long been banned by cruise lines, but they used to allow these outlet multipliers. Royal Caribbean has banned them completely, and other cruise lines are set to follow. But there is one thing you can do to solve this problem. The cruise lines will still allow you to bring a plug that has multiple USB ports on it. So you can turn one outlet into 4 or even 8 USB inputs, which means you can just plug everything in to one station. It works really well, and these are very inexpensive on Amazon or at Walmart. So go prepared. Don't try to bring an outlet extender, which is being confiscated more and more these days. Now, the next item on this list has had some serious consequences for some cruising passengers. But before I get to that, I want to know what you think the silliest item is that cruise lines ban? Put it in the comments below. One of our subscribers recently brought to my attention a TikToker that was banned for life from Carnival Cruise Lines for sneaking alcohol on board. But the real issue was that she posted about it all over the internet, and cruise lines aren't big fans of getting embarrassed. While hard alcohol is a prohibited item on all major cruise lines, many cruise lines do allow you to bring a certain small amount of alcohol on board if it's in the form of a bottle of wine or a bottle of champagne, and in some cases you can bring a 6-pack of beer on board. So you need to check with your cruise line to see what their restrictions are. But think of it like any other restaurant or bar you might go to. Unless it's a restaurant with a BYOB policy, they're not letting you bring in your own drinks because that's their business. Cruise lines rely on the profits they make through their alcohol sales on board and through the packages they sell. So they really do have to limit the amount passengers can bring on. And if you're bringing something on that you're not supposed to, the worst thing you can do is brag about it. While the alcohol ban disappoints some adults, this next ban can disappoint the kids as well. I was on a cruise not too long ago where I saw a kid in the pool area playing with a water gun, only to have the lifeguard come up to him and make him find his parents and let them know that he was going to have to confiscate that toy gun. Cruise lines have a policy that you're not allowed to bring anything on board that resembles a weapon, no matter how much it looks like a toy. And also, when you're at a port of call, if you're into like replica swords or knives or anything of that nature, keep in mind they're not going to let you bring that back on the ship. Now, in many cases, if you're buying, say, a pocket knife, they will allow you to turn it over to them and retrieve it when you get back home. But be careful, because depending on what it is, if the cruise line staff deems it dangerous, they could force you to simply throw it out at the port before getting back on the ship. There's always a number of passengers on any cruise ship that require some type of mobility assistance. And if you're one of those, you want to be careful about some new changes being made. Because if you require a wheelchair or you have a scooter, Carnival has imposed a new ban that if that wheelchair and scooter is greater than 22 inches wide, they won't let you bring it on the ship. Because what they're saying is it has to be able to fit inside the door and get inside your cabin. They no longer want people leaving these things out in the hallway or elsewhere on the ship. While other major cruise lines don't have this specific limitation yet, other major cruise lines are moving in this direction. In fact, some cruise lines have already started restricting passengers who have mobility assistance needs to booking cabins that are accessible. And that way they have a limit on the number of people boarding the ship who are requiring this type of assistance. So if you require mobility assistance, make sure you check with your cruise line's restrictions before you show up, because you don't want to be stuck having to leave your wheelchair behind and not having the assistance that you need. But wait until you hear this next item with wheels being banned by cruise lines. But first, if you've gotten any good information from these tips so far, make sure you subscribe to our channel and get all of our cruising updates. It was probably a decade ago or so when I first saw a kid just skating along on his sneakers and wondering how in the world did he do that? Well, there are these wheeled shoes that have a little wheel in the heel of them, and you can walk with the shoe, but you can also just kind of glide along like on a little skate. Well, cruise lines are dead set against these shoes, and if you try to bring wheeled shoes on board, they will be confiscated. Cruise lines say they're a safety hazard and they've had too many accidents with these things, so keep that in mind and leave the wheeled shoes at home. And this next item, you'll want to make sure you leave on the ship. I've never heard anybody trying to bring fruit onto a cruise ship. But there is so much fresh fruit available on the cruise that a lot of times I've seen passengers try to bring it off the ship, especially when they're going on an excursion or doing something at a port of call and they want a little snack. But this is a big no-no at many ports of call, especially those in Mexico and other places in the Caribbean. They have a no tolerance policy for introducing fruit from a foreign country into their port. And if you try to bring it on board, you could be fined. We actually are aware of several passengers who tried to bring fruit off of a cruise ship at Cozumel and were fined $500 for trying to do so. And $500 isn't even close to the penalty you could get for bringing on this next banned item. While more and more states and countries are legalizing the use of marijuana, it is still a completely banned item on all major cruise lines, and this includes CBD gummies or CBD oils or anything containing CBD. In many cases where passengers have brought on marijuana or CBD of any form onto a cruise ship, they have been kicked off the ship, the product has been confiscated, and in some cases, they have been turned over to local authorities for prosecution. It just isn't worth the risk. Bringing marijuana, CBD, or any illegal drug on board can have devastatingly serious consequences. It's just best to leave all of that stuff at home. So now that you know what you can't bring on a cruise, there are a few things that you can and should bring on your next cruise to ensure a smooth sailing. I'll tell you all about those right here.